The restaurant was her idea, not my wife's, my daughter-in-law's. She picked the place, made the reservation, even texted me the address like she was doing us a favor. I remember thinking that was nice of her. I remember that specifically because I'd think about it later. It was Mother's Day. My wife, Carol, had gotten dressed up a little. Nothing fancy, just a blouse she liked and the earrings I gave her maybe 15 years ago. She was happy. That's the part that stays with me. She was genuinely happy on the drive over. We got seated by the window. My son, Derek, ordered an appetizer right away. His wife, Megan, was on her phone for the first few minutes. Normal enough. The place was busy. It was loud in that comfortable Sunday kind of way. Then the waiter came to take our drink orders. Megan looked up from her phone, smiled at him, and said, casually, like she was mentioning the weather, "Just so you know, we're not paying for her." She nodded toward Carol. I heard it. The waiter heard it. I looked at Derek. He nodded. Slow. Deliberate. Like it had already been discussed. I looked back down at my menu. I didn't say anything. I didn't put the menu down. I didn't look at Carol's face because I wasn't ready to see what was on it. I just kept reading the menu like I hadn't heard a word. But I had heard every single one. Carol didn't say anything, either. That was the thing about my wife. 31 years married and she had this way of absorbing things quietly. Not weakness, more like she'd learned when to let something settle before deciding what it meant. I always respected that about her. She picked up her water glass and took a slow sip. The waiter glanced at me for just a second, then wrote something down and walked away. I know what he was thinking. Probably nothing. Probably just another family dinner with some tension underneath it. Derek started talking about something. A project at work, I think. Megan laughed at something he said. Carol asked a polite question. The conversation moved the way conversations do when everyone agrees not to address the thing that just happened. I've known Megan for about 4 years. She and Derek got married in 2021. Small ceremony, backyard thing because of everything going on at the time. She was fine at first. Polite, a little distant, but I didn't read much into it. Things shifted maybe a year in. Small stuff. She'd make plans that didn't include Carol. Holidays got complicated. There were comments, quiet ones, the kind you can't quite call out without sounding oversensitive. Derek never pushed back, not once. I noticed that. I noticed it the way you notice a slow leak. Not alarming at first, but you keep an eye on it. By the time we sat down at that restaurant, I'd been keeping an eye on it for a while. The bread came. Carol broke off a small piece and buttered it carefully. Megan was talking about a trip she and Derek were planning. Europe. Some coastal town in Portugal she'd seen on Instagram. She had the whole thing mapped out. Flights, hotels, a cooking class. She described it in detail, and I noticed she never once said, "You two should come sometime." Not even as a throwaway line. Carol smiled and said it sounded beautiful. I watched Derek while Megan talked. He was relaxed, comfortable. That bothered me more than anything Megan had said. He'd grown up watching me treat his mother a certain way. He knew what respect looked like in a marriage. He'd seen it his whole life. And he just sat there and nodded. I'd been making excuses for him for about 2 years, telling myself he was in a difficult position, that marriage changes a man's priorities, that Megan was strong-willed, and he was just keeping the peace. But, there's a difference between keeping the peace and co-signing something. The waiter came back, took our food orders. Megan ordered the salmon. Derek got the ribeye. When the waiter got to Carol, she ordered the chicken, then quietly added, "And I'll have a separate check." "That's fine." She said it so gently, like she was the one being considerate. I set my fork down, just for a second, then I picked it back up. I'd already decided something, but I wasn't ready to move yet. The food arrived, and everything looked normal from the outside. 4 people at a window table, Mother's Day, nice restaurant. Candles on the tables, that kind of place. But, I'd been thinking about a conversation I had with Derek about 6 weeks earlier. He'd called me on a Tuesday night, which was unusual. We talked maybe once a week, usually Sundays. He said he wanted to talk about the future, about finances, about what Carol and I had saved, what the house was worth, whether we had a will updated. I thought it was a mature conversation at the time, responsible, even. Then, about 2 weeks after that, Megan called Carol, said she wanted to have lunch, just the two of them. Carol came home quiet. I asked how it was. She said, "Fine." But, she didn't elaborate, and Carol always elaborated. I didn't push it. Then, I found something, not dramatic, Just a text notification that came up on the kitchen counter while Carol was in the shower. Derek's name. I wasn't trying to read it, but I did. It was from Megan's phone, sent to Derek. She needs to understand she's not the priority anymore. If he won't say it, the dinner will. I put the phone face down exactly the way it was. Carol came downstairs and made coffee and asked what I wanted to do that weekend. I said I didn't know yet. The dinner had already been planned. I had 2 weeks and I had just enough information to make sure that when it happened, I was ready. I didn't tell Carol what I'd seen. That was the hardest part. 31 years and I'd never kept anything from her that mattered. But I needed her reaction at that dinner to be real. If she knew what was coming, it wouldn't be. Carol was too composed, too careful. Megan would sense it and adjust. So I carried it alone for 2 weeks. I called my brother-in-law Ray, who'd been through a situation with his own kids a few years back. Nothing identical, but close enough. He listened without interrupting, which is rare for Ray. When I finished, he said, "What do you want to happen? Not what should happen. What do you want?" I thought about that for a long time. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want Carol humiliated. I didn't want Derek to feel ambushed, even though that's exactly what he'd helped plan. What I wanted was for the moment to land correctly, for there to be no way to reframe it afterward, no way for Megan to rewrite it in the car ride home, no way for Derek to tell himself it wasn't that bad. I wanted a witness. I called the restaurant 4 days before Mother's Day, asked to speak with the manager. His name was Paul. I explained the situation in about 3 minutes, calmly, no drama. I told him what I expected might happen. I told him what I'd like him to do if it did. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "I understand completely. We'll take care of it." I thanked him and hung up. Mother's Day morning was quiet. Carol made coffee and sat by the back window the way she always does on Sundays. She had her robe on and her reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked relaxed. That was good. I wanted her relaxed. I'd done 3 things in the days leading up to dinner. The first was practical. I called our bank and moved a portion of our joint savings into a separate account Carol and I had opened years ago for a home renovation we never ended up doing. Nothing dramatic. Just repositioning. I wanted a clear picture of where things stood in case the conversation that night opened something larger. The second thing was I talked to a friend of mine, Gary, who's a family attorney. Not to file anything. Just to understand what certain conversations, like the one Derek had with me about the will, could mean if patterns continued. Gary said what I expected him to say. He said document everything and don't react emotionally in public. The third thing I did was write it down. All of it. The Tuesday phone call, Megan's lunch with Carol, the text I saw on the counter, dates, times, exact wording where I had it. I printed it and put it in an envelope in my desk drawer. I wasn't building a case, not yet. I was just making sure that if anyone ever tried to tell a different version of events, I had the real one written down somewhere. We got dressed. Carol wore the blouse, the earrings. She was smiling when we pulled out of the driveway. Dinner moved slowly at first. Appetizers, small talk, Megan's Portugal trip again. Derek refilling his water glass. Carol asking questions she didn't need the answers to. Just being kind the way she always was. I ate steadily, watched the table, watched the room. Paul, the manager, was visible near the back. He'd see me when we walked in. We made brief eye contact and that was it. Nothing obvious, nothing that would register to anyone watching. When the waiter came to check on us midway through the meal, Megan smiled and reminded him again. Lighter this time, almost cheerful about it. Don't forget. Separate check for her. She tilted her head toward Carol. The waiter nodded and moved on. Derek cut into his ribeye. Carol set her fork down for just a moment, then picked it back up. I watched my son chew his food and say nothing. Dessert menus came. Megan said she was watching her sugar. Derek passed. Carol ordered a small slice of cake because it was Mother's Day and she'd earned it. When the plates were cleared, the waiter brought the checks. He set one in front of Derek and Megan. Then he set one in front of Carol, and then Paul walked over. He didn't rush. He stood at the end of the table, looked at everyone calmly, and said, "The ladies' meal has already been taken care of. And just so the table knows, dinner tonight was our honor." He set a small card down in front of Carol. Megan's face went still. Derek stopped chewing. The card was simple. Just the restaurant's name and a handwritten note on the back. To a gracious woman on Mother's Day, you deserve to be celebrated. Carol read it twice. I watched her do it. She didn't cry, but her jaw tightened the way it does when she's holding something in. She folded the card carefully and put it in her purse. Megan looked at me for the first time all evening. Really looked at me. Trying to figure out when it had stopped being her dinner. I picked up my coffee cup and took a slow sip. Derek set his fork down and didn't pick it back up. Nobody said anything for a long moment. The restaurant kept moving around us, other tables, other families, other conversations, but our table was completely still. I paid my portion, left Paul a generous tip with a note that just said, "Thank you," and helped Carol with her jacket. In the parking lot, Derek said my name once. I turned around. I looked at him the way my own father used to look at me when I'd done something that disappointed him. No anger, no speech, just a long, clear look that said, "I see exactly who you are right now." Then I opened Carol's door, walked around to my side, and drove home. She didn't ask me how it happened. She just reached over somewhere on the highway and put her hand on mine. We didn't talk about it that night. Some things don't need words to be understood. Some things just need to be witnessed.